We will kick off this meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the Franklin Municipal Planning Commission Joint Conceptual Workshop. We'll start with a call to order and a roll call vote. Commissioner Allen.
Present.
Commissioner Franks.
Present.
Commissioner Harrison. Present. Commissioner Lindsay is present. Commissioner McLemore.
Present.
Commissioner Orr, not
Gotta get
yet.
this right tonight.
Commissioner Alderman Peterson.
Sacrilege.
And Commissioner Williamson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Present.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts, not yet. Alderman Baggett, Barnhill, Blanton, Alderman Hanson. And Mayor Moore.
Present.
Okay. We've got 3 items on our agenda tonight and about 30 minutes scheduled for each of those items. Item number 1 is a discussion of a development plan revision requesting a change in side yard setbacks for 65-foot wide single-family lots from 7.5 feet to 5 feet on approximately 295 acres located west of the intersection of Clovercroft Road and Market Street. This is the Poplar Farms PUD. So we'll start with staff presentation. Chelsea?
Thank you. The proposed revision is to reduce the side setbacks for 65-foot lots from 7.5 feet to 5 feet. Envision Franklin encourages exceptional design through proportion, rhythm, and massing along the street. This is carried through all of our zoning districts, and for lots of that size, a 10-foot side yard setback would be required. As a lot size gets smaller, setbacks get smaller. Since standards can be created within a planned district, staff was able to make a compromise that 65-foot lots would have 7.5-foot side yard setbacks because the proportion of lot size to space between the homes still met the intent of Envision Franklin. The proposed reduction in setback does not, in staff's professional opinion, provide the intended proportion, rhythm, and massing along the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone from the applicant that would like to speak to this item?
Good evening, everybody. Brian Gallagher. I'm principal at Edge Planning, Landscape Architecture, and Urban Design. We're the applicant for the original development plan as well as this plan revision. I know since then we've had the original group developer, Meritage Homes, was on board. Since then, we've been able to line up our final builder group, which brought on Signature Homes, and that kind of started this conversation with us internally when we were looking at our buildable envelopes, architecture. And so since then, I just real briefly wanted to touch on our approved development plan. I know we've had some faces change since we came through about 2-3 years ago on that. So our original property is described with 295 acres with 546 units entitled on it. This revision would apply to about 31%, 170 lots, just a 65-foot wide front-loaded homes. Those lots you can see on here. Chelsea, how do I point?
I don't know that the pointer works.
Oh, it works, okay.
Okay.
So the darker color hatch, it's set for the 7 larger 2-acre lots that are in the HHO buffer are the ones that would be affected by this side setback reduction that we're requesting. As you can see, most of these lots are internal to development or buffered by community open space, either on our property or adjacent properties. So as we get into this, Chelsea and yourselves did cover kind of why we were making this request a little bit, but the key points for us when we began to look at this and talk with the builder were really trying to provide a lot more variety in the street elevations of these homes and what we can provide to homeowners with options for 3-car garages on some of these homes, change our massing, as well as adjust some of our spacing between the homes with that. One of the things that we are also proposing with this is increasing the setback for all front-loaded garages from a minimum of 20 feet from the street to 40 feet to help offset some of that appearance as you have coming down the street of people parking in front of those garages in motor courts. Obviously, we have a lot of families in these communities in Franklin, kind of toys, bikes, those sorts of things would all be, as you drive down the street, an additional 20-foot back, or in some cases screened by a 3rd-car garage, as we'll see as we go through this. Like we said, this is only the 65-foot front load lots that are affected. All the other homes are alley loaded and would remain as currently approved. So this just shows in a plan view section what the approved lot layout would be with a standard 7.5-foot side setback, 2-car garage set at least 20 foot back from the front facade of the residence where the front door is. And then what we're proposing in increasing that to a 40-foot, which that would allow us to do an option of a porte-cochere, which is shown in this with the 3rd-car garage set to the side, which would also reduce the view into the front-loaded garage motor courts, or in some cases, the 3rd-car garage can be attached to the residence, again, kind of minimizing that view as you come down the street of those front-loaded garages. So a few examples, as you've probably seen in your packets, of product that can be delivered on the currently approved lots, for examples of massing and scale. On all these, you'll see fairly standard, not really unique in the way of massing. We have our standard box in there, 2-car garage setback in this case, 2-car driveway going up in each of these, in these cases. Though you can change the architecture, the general massing on the lot spacing is going to be fairly similar as you drive down the street. And so when we looked at what we could provide by reducing the setbacks by those additional 2.5 feet, it really opened up the opportunity to look at options like we see here, which would allow for the porte-cochere, the 3rd-car option, reducing that view as you see coming down the street, reducing the amount of concrete you have on that driveway to a single lane versus 2-car width coming in. It's just another example of the porte-cochere with a varied elevation. This is an example that shows even with the 3rd-car garage added, we can still not, you won't always have that additional massing on the 2nd floor that would go all the way across. You just have the breezeway connection there. This lends itself to a wider appearance and separation between the two lots as well, and kind of varying that massing as you go down the street a lot more than we could with just the standard setbacks. The other thing that we are able to integrate in this is an option if someone did not want a 3rd-car garage. It allows us the space to recess that garage back, push the driveway more to the side, and allow for the ability to have a wraparound porch on these homes, which again just provides a little bit more variety, a little bit more character to these homes as you drive up and down the street. Can we pull up the additional? And so based on our neighborhood meeting, some of the feedback that we received from neighbors in the adjacent communities, we pulled together 2 other graphics. This one shows what it could look like with, and it's a little small, but the 5-yard setbacks, a proposed streetscape. And so this incorporates all of the options that could be built. So you have your porte-cochere with a 3rd-car garage. You have someone that maybe just still only needs a 2-car garage, but would be recessed back from the street, in some cases upwards of 50, 60 feet. And then the 3rd-car garage attached in the porch. So we think when you look at this in the scale, potentially across the entire street, it provides a lot more character, a lot more variation and uniqueness to the street that we can deliver, which would just be a little bit better product, better community as a whole. Can you pop to or it'll come through, I think, one, yeah. And so this was the relationship graphic that they asked us to create was, can we kind of see stacked between the two, what would our massings look like, separations of buildings with the 10-yard or 10-foot separation between homes with 5 foot on each lot, or the 15-foot separation between, as it's currently approved, kind of worst case scenario. The one thing it doesn't show very well, because we're looking at it in street elevation, but where we would have these pinch points in some of these scenarios, like right here, that pinch point between the home at 10 feet is all the way at the rear where we would have the garage, 40 plus feet from the street. We would, from a street frontage standpoint, you'd have upwards of 40 feet between those homes and massings. So with that, happy to answer any questions, concerns, comments from aldermen and commissioners.
Could we get him to explain something before he leaves?
Yeah, sure.
How does it go from 40 feet to 10 feet? I didn't understand that.
So if we go back a slide, our pinch point, or the 2 closest points between these residences in this example here, would be at the front face of the garage to the rear of that home. On the street frontage side, closest to the street, you'd have much more separation between the main massing of the home.
That's without the garage, right? That's without the extra garage
Yeah,
up front?
without the extra garage to the front, that's correct. And so in that scenario where we would have the extra garage, in this case detached here, then you would have the potential to just have 10 foot of separation
Okay.
at the
Mr.
street
O'Rourke
frontage.
Has a comment, question?
Yeah, if you need 5 feet, is there some regulation keeping you going to 70 foot lot width instead of 65?
Not a regulation. We have studied that scenario both early on and now, and it just, with layouts, turns out you lose too much density to make it viable. If that's fair to say from the development side.
I mean, I don't know that that's
we-
necessarily our fault there.
Right.
No, and I mean, that's, I believe everyone is comfortable with moving forward the way it's approved. It's just as we started to have this conversation when the final builder group got finalized and looking at options, that's how this conversation started to revisit it with staff and commissioners and all of it, so.
Hey,
Other
question.
comment, yes.
And I just want to clarify, this started off we started off with a requirement of 10 feet, and staff compromised down to 7.5 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to be clear.
I would say in general, I wouldn't be in favor of reducing those side setbacks for a couple of reasons. One is the staff had illustrated just the negative massing impact on the street. But then also too, when you add that third car in and you're pushing all that back, it's eliminating that backyard. I know that's something that's a premium and is not as much as a feature that you can find for a house in Franklin. So I don't see a lot of the, some of the positives as positives. I see them kind of negatively affecting that lot layout.
Alderman Baggett?
Would this be comparable to like Crothers Cove Crothers Cove is in Ladd Park, and a lot of these designs look similar.
It's similar.
It is.
Building out the homes that are, that also has homes that are facing forward.
It has front-loaded garages, but all of these are behind something.
Yeah.
So is the width between the houses similar to Crothers Cove?
Carruthers was 5 feet.
We got,
Sorry. Yeah. Our builder and developer group, apologies. So,
Yeah, Tyler Belcher, Signature Homes. So yes, very similar to what we did over there at Carruthers, but without the ones with the garages pulled forward.
On the front. But the width that you're suggesting is a similar width between the homes as Crothers Cove?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I used to live there, and I would encourage folks to go drive through. It's in Ladd Park, and the architecture it does actually add some character. It adds a lot of character, and I understand the staff opinion, but it actually go ride through Crothers Cove. It's a and the backyards, because that's a great point. Lot depths on this development, how are they compared to
we're
Crothers
at
Cove?
130 foot.
They're similar. This is 130 here, and I believe we were the same there.
Okay.
Or very close to the same.
And I need to be clear, so maybe I need to finish my thought. I don't
Right.
see myself supporting this. Architecture is great and all that, but I don't see, that's too, in my opinion, that's too close. I'm sure it's gonna be a great product and all that, but I don't see supporting going from 10, compromise to 7.5 and down to the 5. That's too close for my opinion.
the example that shows the porte cochere, my wife has used that term all through my married life, and I rarely see a porte cochere in a house. But it appears, is that living space above that drive-through?
Yes, sir.
There's potential.
And so-
Actually, I lived in that house in Watkins Creek. We built that one in Watkins Creek when I first came up here, and that's what got us thinking is like, hey, we think we can do some prettier product.
So how much increase in living space? When I look at the slide number 12 in your presentation, where it shows the approved lot layout versus the proposed lot layout,
It gives us about,
the entire house extends back farther because you're moving your garage back to 40 feet.
And in this scenario, it's a little bit of a generic box, it's based off one version, but.
Right.
Right, that
This-
box, we have other, on the left layout, with the 7.5-foot setbacks, we do have other layouts that are longer, that have living space behind the garage as well, you know, for a larger home.
And this doesn't show the living space that's associated with the porte cochere either.
No, sir, but
So
it
it looks
goes
like you're
over the
putting a lot
garage.
more house on the same lot,
Yes, sir.
actually on a narrower lot. I mean, you're stretching the house, you're taking advantage of the 2.5 feet on either side, and extending back another 10 or 15 or 20 feet.
You know, depending on the potential model chosen.
That
Yeah,
2.5
right, depending on the potential. But it looks like you're putting a lot more house on a lot that now is only going to be 10 feet
10
from its
feet.
next door neighbor,
Sure.
when you count the 5 feet on either side, which makes me nervous. I watched a house burn at West Haven 6 or 8 or 10 years ago, and there were some real nervous people when those $2 million houses start going up, in the close proximity. And the other thing that concerns me when you get that close is that inevitably there's a large HVAC unit associated with each of these structures in that space. There's a potential to begin to affect drainage from the front to the back.
I would say, I do think as part of this with our original approval going through with staff is we cannot put the HVACs on the sides
On the
due to
sides.
we have drainage easements essentially for groundwater flow through the side yard setback.
Yeah, because it is.
So
a
it kind of
drainage
negates some of that concern as
Mm-hmm.
well as servicing where we have, you know, drainage easements that come through with actual structures through the lots.
The intent, so that the porte cochere home usually doesn't, maybe sells one out every 5 to 8 times. So you'll have a porte cochere style home next to one that may have a wrap porch. So you're getting that 20 to 30 to even 40 feet apart between structures when it's actually built. And so that's where, when you're driving down the street, it makes the homes feel very far apart, even though they're, you know, you're at 5 and 5. That's, as you mentioned, that's usually back all the way at the garage. So it looks good, and it just gives us more ways to design the home.
And I have a question for you. But even if you stayed at 7.5 between, you still have the option, however, to extend your garage back, or that, there's no exception. You still have that design concept. You could still, instead of 20, you could still take it back 30, 25 or 30, if you like, in the design. Am I wrong?
No, ma'am, the challenge I have is that, as I've studied that a bunch, is I've got a 22-foot garage, right? I gotta have 2-foot separation between garage doors, 9-foot garage. And then I've got to get a hallway past a bedroom, and the math starts getting where it gets tight. So
I know you couldn't do 40, because I was kind of looking at it. I know you couldn't do 40, but I thought you could do more than 20.
Yeah, it's close. You know, you get a primary bedroom and that you're have on the main level, and it gets very skinny to get past there. 'Cause you've got that around 26 feet that you're working with the 7.5 setback.
Right.
How much, if someone chose the porte cochere option that I think you said you lived in, back to Roger's point, how much square footage is that added on that second floor from that standard house if it didn't have it?
It goes over that one-car garage, so it's about 230 square feet, 250 square feet.
For that model there?
That's correct.
Okay.
So that additional living space could extend over, not just over the passage, the
No,
drive-through.
I'm sorry,
but-
it doesn't go over the garage. It goes over the driveway, but it's the same depth as
Okay,
the
sure.
garage, so it's about
Yeah,
12 by 20.
Just to try and quantify that a little bit, going back to your point.
yeah.
Are you increasing density on versus your original plan, or same?
Nope.
Not same number? of
Same
units?
number of units, not changing. Really, nothing else is changing. Roadway network, we're well into our 4th site plan at this point of some phase, whether approval or submittal, as well as Market Street's full site plan submittal. So we're not trying to change density, roadway network, any of that. It's just simply that setback for those 170 lots, the 65
Would you
foot.
still keep the 20-foot though as a shorter drive if you needed it? Or are you just asking for 40 feet?
I think if
In addition to 20?
No, I think that as part of this, we would commit to whether you had the porte cochere option or not, we would put every front load garage back 40 feet. So if someone still just didn't want that third car option or that wraparound porch and just the 2-car garage, we would still set it back a minimum of 40 feet. So that would be consistent through all the lots. You wouldn't have those garages moving back and forth.
Okay, I got.
And that helps, parking, so we don't want, we like neighborhoods that you don't see the cars and it's pretty and everybody can park way back, so that's the other advantage we get of that. that
And this
you
is
drive.
still only, what, 20 to 30% of the total number of lots that
Yeah, I
are
think
affected by this?
31%, I think is what.
Okay. Alderman Hanson?
That was my question, the number of lots that were
Okay.
affected. 31 was it?
31%, 170 lots.
Mayor Moore?
Yeah, there are things that architecturally that I really like seeing and some of the variety, and that's always good, but I've just got a lot of heartburn with narrowing that setback to, on the side to 5 feet. That concerns me a lot, and when I've driven through some of the projects in town that are really close, I worry about the stormwater drainage and just a little narrow, so.
Alderman Berger?
Yeah, I normally would sort of wonder about that too, but I like the fact that when you're looking at it, it's wider up front. I like that because then when you're driving down the street, it doesn't give that view of it all being compact. Crothers Cove. I have a friend that lives down there and I think they look great. And that's 10 feet. So honestly, I don't have a problem with that so much. Also, can you tell me, and the one I'm very familiar with, if Signature Homes built, was Ross Bridge.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't even think that's 10 feet, is it?
Those are 10 feet down there, yes.
Are they? I thought they were smaller than 10 feet.
Those are 5 and 5.
Because if you look at Ross Bridge, if you've ever been down off of, it's not actually not in Birmingham, it's
It's in Hoover.
Hoover. That is an awesome development. And if you drive down the street, you get that same feel and look. And I've been in those homes, and I've been in the model home when you first built those. And then I have friends that live in that area, and that's exactly what you're talking about here. And I like that differential. It's not 30-some% of it. I think it gives you a little bit more leeway to make this more architecturally appealing. And I like the fact it's set back, that those garages are back in and it really shows out the home. And I've never gotten that feel when I drove down in Ross Bridge that those homes were compacted. I'm surprised that you tell me they're 10. I thought they were even less than that, but at the same time, they don't look that way.
No, I think that goes back to, in a lot of the scenarios, you don't have the portico share next to the portico share.
Right.
So that pinch point's farther back.
Yeah, so you have a variety. So nothing is going to be the same next to each other. It's all going to be different, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
You're not going to put the same models next to each other.
That's correct. No 2 elevations are allowed to be next door or diagonal.
Right, you'll have that.
Streetscape guidelines.
And I think really that goes back to our core when we
Okay.
started talking with Tyler, and that is you really can vary the massing of the home. You don't really end up with kind of that same box and then 2-car
Right,
garage,
'cause
box and
I-
2-car garage. A little bit of extra footage goes a pretty long way architecturally.
Yeah, because I don't see that at Ross Bridge at all. And you don't see that at Crothers Cove, where you used to live?
No, it's great.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Alderman Brown, do you?
Yeah, obviously looks fantastic. I mean, the design is much greater or much better, and I'll certainly take a look at Carruthers Cove and others. I didn't support this density of this project the first time around, and it feels like now we're going to shrink our standards down. You're going to keep the density, and you're going to be able to sell a bigger home with more garage. Feels like a pretty good win-win. I'm not sure I'm really supportive of that at this point, especially to create that kind of a situation for neighbors that squeezing these houses together. So, but I'll at least do my homework and go check out some other examples.
Well, and I think too, I know we've had some, and Tyler obviously has some of, it's not always the easiest to see in a black and white elevation, some of those relationships, but I'm sure we have plenty of marketing and, as-built photos that if anyone would like to reach out, we're more than happy to put a package together and share. Because obviously not everyone's going to drive down to Ross Bridge, but
That's right.
you might. But, we could, you know, in terms of trying to keep the presentation slides at least a little compact for y'all, but we can share some of that additional photography if anyone would like that, to see some of those relationships a little more realistically.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
I concur, 5 feet is just way too small, but I'm willing to go check out Carruthers Cove and see, and that's 10 feet?
It's at the end, if you go to Carruthers where it dead ends,
Yeah.
it's the neighborhood on the right, right before you dead end into Long Lane,
Okay.
in case anyone was.
I think you're saying, are you saying 5 and 5, or you're saying 10 and 10?
It's 5 and
20?
5.
It's 5 and 5, it's what they're asking
10
for.
total.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's-
And this
that's-
is not
ooh.
giving you any more units, is it?
Right,
You're
same
still at the
number.
same units, right?
unit count,
So you're
same
not
lot layout.
increasing the density, okay.
We're
Good.
just changing
Okay.
elevations to.
Okay. Any other questions? That wraps that up. Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2, discussion of a development plan proposing 33 residential units on approximately 5.3 acres with 3 modifications of standards for parking, for retaining wall height, and for fence height, located at the intersection of ANC Williams Way and Fifth Avenue North, the Hill property. So we'll start with staff presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is what everyone knows as the Hill property. We have been able to secure a name for it now. This subdivision will be called Bousquet Place, so you should hear that name in the future. Staff is generally supportive of the plan and the 3 MOS request. I will let the applicant present those specifics. They have that in their presentation. In terms of staff comments, really the one outstanding issue right now is that we need to have a resolution on the matter of fire access through the cemetery. We have spoken with the fire chief, staff has, and the idea of going through the cemetery is supported in general. The fire chief does not see the need to upgrade the roads within the cemetery for fire access. He does ask that we have documentation from the cemetery that they are okay with this access being granted in the future through plat. We don't have that yet, but it is early in the process. This is one of the few times where we have joint conceptual before the staff comments are released to the applicants. They'll get those on Tuesday. It has been discussed with them, though. They know it's something that they need to obtain as part of the process. So with that, I can answer any questions from staff, but I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, great. Applicant?
Good evening, and thank you for having us here. I'm Derwin Jackson with the Franklin Housing Authority, and we're here as a group. I would just quickly say this. Been several years ago when Brant Bousquet bought this opportunities that may be coming down the pike that he said, I'm very interested in doing. And so, you know, he really was the one to spearhead me to get involved with this project. And that's what kind of, we renamed it. We want to rename it to Bousquet Place in honor of him. But the four of us, it's 4 nonprofits came together to work on this. When the city put out the proposal for us to do that, is Hard Bargain, CHP, Community Housing Partnership, Habitat for Humanity, and Franklin Housing Authority. And we, along with, you know, our biggest partners, the city and the county. It's also, we're all partnering to try to bring affordable and workforce housing. We're targeting 80% to 150% of the median income in this community. And so we are very excited about trying to do this. And I'm not going to hold up a lot of time. I want our developer team to come forward to kind of lay out the plan of what we're proposing to do. And we're just looking forward to it, hopefully, to make this a great opportunity to target people for our teachers and police officers and people that, you know, part of what I know, what I hear in this community all the time is a lot of people who work here but can't afford to live here. And so we are truly trying to make this development one that would truly meet some of those needs. So I'm going to turn it over to our developer team, some of them Greg Gamble and Mike Hathaway.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Greg Gamble, and it's such an honor to be able to
Hey,
work with these
Greg.
nonprofits as
Greg.
we pursue. Sorry, can you just get a little closer to the mic? I've had a request from our production.
I sure can. How are we doing? All right, and if you need to remind me, please do. But hi, my name is Greg Gamble, and it's such an honor to be a part of this development team and this process, working with these nonprofits in honor of a person who you really can't say enough about, and just naming this after Brand is such an honor as well. The first few slides that we have are contextual slides. You're very familiar with the property. This property is directly adjacent to the Sonic on Hillsborough Road. This site was previously used by the city of Franklin for various utilities. It was water department for a while. Had an existing building on it. If you go out there today, it's predominantly asphalt and concrete and building foundation. A portion of this property has a historic preservation overlay on it. And that's due to its proximity to the cemetery that's there now. The Toussaint Cemetery is on the right, and then the Mount Hope Cemetery is on the left. So we've got two different cemeteries that are located here. Along Hillsborough Road, we have an approximately 35 to 40 foot retaining wall. This retaining wall gives us some pause for safety for any residents that may be living on top of this area, and we're going to talk about that safety consideration in just a moment. But I wanted to outline for you so you could see the location of the 75-foot historic buffer that's applied to the property line adjacent to the cemetery. You'll notice that this area has concrete and asphalt in it. All of that will be removed, and this area will be replanted per the zoning ordinance requirements for historic buffers. The master plan includes a total of 33 homes. There is a mixture of home types on this property. The policy and the policy for the property is mixed residential. The current zoning of the property is civic institutional. We need to ask for it to be rezoned to planned development district. So that's what we're in the process of doing now. There are two different building types. The first is townhome. Townhomes are shown here in red. They actually face in front onto Hillsborough Road at the top of the retaining wall. And then there's one other 5-unit townhome building that's in the top left corner, fronting onto the new public right-of-way. The other 3 building types are multiplex buildings. Now, the home lives as a 2-story townhome, but we have 2 that are back-to-back. So you have a front facing toward the public right-of-way, you have a front facing into the interior of the property. So each of those multiplex buildings have doors access from the ground floor, but it's almost like having 2 duplexes that are back-to-back. Every unit that you see here is 3-bedroom. But we have a combination of 1-story and 2-story buildings, recognizing that not everyone who needs affordable housing can have a 2-story living condition. Some need 1-story living conditions, and we're trying to accommodate that on this property. The safety fire access that Amy was talking about is in response to the fact that the intersection at Sonic on Hillsborough Road is under the 100-year floodplain when the 100-year flood exists. So this isn't an emergency connection that the fire department is asking for everyday emergencies. This is when the Harpeth River is flooded and you cannot access this property as a result of that. What we're proposing to do is to add an asphalt driveway that connects to the drive that is within the cemetery and then exit out onto New Hope Road. We've had Tower 2, I think it was, drive this, pull on into the cemetery, go through the columns that are there now, exit back out. So we've been really working closely with the fire department to make sure that this is something that can be accommodated. And if not, we can look for our alternative routes, but we believe that this is something that satisfies the city. We have been in conversations over the past 6 or 7 months with the cemetery, so this is not a surprise to them. They're aware of it. We just have to get documentation filled out, finished, and then submitted to the city of Franklin. There are 3 modifications that we're requesting. One is for a reduction in parking. We had a conversation with the Historic Zoning Commission about reducing the 75-foot historic buffer, which, because of its relationships to the cemetery, they felt was pretty important. With a reduction in the buffer, we could have provided all of the parking, but in respecting that buffer and its full width and restoring that asphalt and concrete area back to landscape, we do need a reduction in parking. The ownership or the developers are confident that we are providing sufficient parking for these townhomes in this plan and will not have a shortfall. We are proposing a total of 2.48 parking spaces per 3-bedroom townhome as a part of this development plan. The second request that we have in modification of standards is for a 6-foot metal picket, non-climbable fence in the front yard along Hillsborough Road. And again, remember, those townhomes are facing Hillsborough, so that's their front. And we want that front architecture along Hillsborough. But we are concerned about the safety considerations along Hillsborough Road with that retaining wall. The zoning ordinance requires a maximum 3-foot retaining wall, or not retaining wall, but fence in a front yard. And we're asking for 6 just to prevent children from climbing over that 3-foot and then getting into a dangerous situation. We do want that to be a black metal picket fence, landscape behind it so that it disappears. We are still working with city staff on the exact location of that fence, whether it should go more on the top of the retaining wall or whether it should be recessed back into the site. So as we move this forward, those conversations will continue. As you review these plans, you will have input on those, but I'm assuming the final decision won't be till site plan, most likely. But if it needs to be addressed sooner, we can do that. The third and final modification of standards is retaining wall height as it relates to residential. Right now, there is a retaining wall that's on the property now. You see it every time you go to Sonic. And it's right here at the stormwater basin. There is this kind of architectural feature that's alongside the retaining wall where they used to transfer materials from the top into trucks down below. That's going to be removed. When we remove that, we need to take the rest of the wall down because we need a structurally sound retaining wall that is built to today's standards. So we're going to be replacing that. This, even though it's existing, this requires a modification of standards through this development plan process. So this shows you the black metal fence. Again, we're still working with staff on its final location. Mike Hathaway with 906 has been working through various architectural elevations with us to identify the right residential character. In Envision Franklin, it requires that the architecture blend with the existing neighborhoods that are adjacent to us. So we're not adjacent to an existing neighborhood. So we're pulling from the history of architecture and the residential character of what we would see in Hard Bargain or downtown Franklin. And so pulling a lot from that character. This is, on the top image, the 2 buildings that you see there circled in yellow that are fronting onto Hillsborough Road. I'm sorry, the top image are the 2 that are on the outside. So we're going from 1-story buildings to 2-story to 1-story. And so those are the ones that are located out here on those edges. And so as you go up in elevation, the architecture is going up in elevation. The 2 townhomes that are in the middle, those are all 2-story, 4-unit townhomes. Here is represented in Mike's drawing down the lower level there. This is a multiplex building. This building has 4 residential homes in it, 2 that are facing, 2 here that are facing the interior of the site, 2 here that are facing back toward the Sonic neighborhood. These are 2 side elevations. We're going to be revising those side elevations prior to the September 6th resubmittal. We had some input from the board and mayor and alderman at the last work session at BOMA. So we're going to go back and look at that elevation, provide some alternatives on what that looks like. On the top image here, this is one of our multiplex buildings. This is the front facade facing back toward our open space park that there is in the middle of the drives. It circles back around. The bottom image then is the 5-unit townhome building that would back up to the cemetery. Historic Zoning Commission asked that we provide a more significant landscape planting behind this building adjacent to Mount Hope. Mount Hope Cemetery does not have the 75-foot buffer like the Toussaint Cemetery does. So there's a little bit of a nook there that we can put this townhome in. So Historic asked us to provide more landscape in that location, which we're going to be able to accomplish, no problem. With that, Mike Hathaway, Derwin, and I are happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'll leave it on the master plan if you have any questions that are referenced that as well.
Okay. Questions? I've got a couple.
Great.
First of all, it's the architectural renderings show some really nice looking structures. I'd expect that out of Mr. Hathaway. But are all the units there, are they all considered to be affordable and workforce housing?
It's going to be a mixture. Part of the RFP response to the city of Franklin when they requested for teams to set forward was that there needed to be a mixture workforce and affordable housing.
Okay.
So it's a combination.
Okay. And then I know it is the solid waste transfer station. So, so that whole structure comes down, and you replace what part of that structure is retaining wall.
Correct.
So you replace that portion of the retaining wall with similar height to what's there now.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I noticed that in some of the multiplex units, when you look at the master plan, especially the two in the middle, there's not. It's hard to tell exactly how parking. Is there parking in close proximity to each of those different multiplex buildings? Is it expected that there's like
Yes, we have
at the top of that?
on-street parking that goes not on the curve, but on the sides here and here. And then we have parking next to and adjacent to our mail kiosks, and then parking that wraps all the way around the back. This is a sidewalk that will connect from the public sidewalk back to the sidewalk at the parking lot.
And is that all done like as parallel parking, or are there slant in?
These are the only parallel parking spaces that we have on the plan
Okay.
that are on the public street. All the other spaces are perpendicular.
Okay. Okay.
Is there a rear elevation of the front floor? Do you have?
They're not included in this packet.
Okay.
At this point with the development plan, we're just character images stage. So that's what we're providing with those architectural elevations. With the site plan, we'll have all 4 sides of the building submitted.
Do you have a rendering showing what it's going to look like when traveling down Hillsborough Road?
I do not.
Would like to see that.
Okay.
Okay. Alderman Brown, did you have?
I will. I'll just, first of all, I appreciate the collaboration. You guys have really listened and been responsive. I think the design work is great. I love the fronting of Hillsborough. That was one of our biggest asks in the beginning was don't have the backs of the houses. And I think you did a really great job of actually looking like houses up on that hill. And Mike, thanks for addressing that one elevation on that one that I'm not real fond of, but I think the rest of it looks great. I look forward to seeing what you do on that next one. But otherwise, I think it looks great.
I'm just grateful.
Okay. No,
somebody
you-
else. Just grateful that we've got to this point. How many years has it been? A long time. And I think this is
8
the
years.
first affordable workforce development that we've had actually come to this point, and hopefully will come to fruition. So we're happy about that. The community is, and we're grateful to the partners as well.
Alderman Baggett.
I think I said this at the last Alderman meeting or the work session, but was there any attempt to add additional units after our work session? What was the conversation like after our work session where some of us expressed, or at least I did, that we could get more, this is, we're a partner in this. And, if the negative thing about this is that we're not doing more with what we've got, and, in my opinion, to provide some affordable housing. I hope that was seriously looked at.
And yes, sir, we did, and when we first even came up with the plan, we tried to, I think we had about 39 or 41 or something on this plan. And as to make it work, because of this site is so tight and the way it is, we wanted to get more, but to really make it where it's a really livable community and also just to meet all the standards for that's required. So to answer your question, we did seriously look at it and definitely would have wanted to get as many as we possibly could. So as the architects went back and looked at it, okay, give us the max we can get on there to meet the standards and even ask for some modifications. But just we seriously looked at it and wanted to get as many as we possibly could, and also stay within what the city requirements were, and also just to make it where there's a livable and comfortable community. So we did look at it seriously to do that.
How many modifications impacted that you're asking for are impacting the number of affordable housing units that you're able to build? The modification. How many modifications?
Sure. I want to add to that as well.
Yeah.
We've studied this site with multiple master plans with city staff, and Amy has been so gracious in giving us her time. You can add more units. Let's say that all of these were one bedroom. Well, we'd have more units, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have more square footage. And this gives us the opportunity to meet families' needs, not individuals' needs. This allows us to provide opportunities for families with children with the 3 bedrooms, which has been a big part of the mission that we've been trying to address. We're already asking for a reduction in the number of parking spaces. If we didn't have the 75-foot historic buffer, we would be able to provide the 3 parking spaces per 3-bedroom townhome. But it doesn't necessarily turn into more units. Now, if you were to say, well, you could do a condominium building and make it 3 or 4 stories, and that would be out of compliance with the zoning or the Envision Franklin criteria, but let's just say hypothetically you could, we would still have a parking problem. It doesn't necessarily mean that we can add more units. Then you start talking about parking structures, and then you're adding more burden to the future homeowners. We need to keep this very affordable, not just at the initial purchase, but in perpetuity when they have to maintain this. We believe that we have some very good open space areas where they can enjoy outdoors, but not have the burden of a swimming pool, not have the burden of a fitness club. Like, there are other opportunities in the city of Franklin where they can take advantage of those at an affordable level down the street at the Williamson County Rec Center. But we can't put that on the homeowners to make that a part of the bill that they have to pay every month.
Thank you.
All right.
Now, these will be deed restricted.
They will be deed restricted.
And since this is a partnership,
Alma.
I'm sorry.
Closer to your mic.
Since this is a partnership, it may be too early for me to ask these questions, but
It's fine.
since it's a partnership, who will manage and how will that work? Do we have a new LLC or whatever for the whole group?
Yes, and we have not worked all that out yet, but between the 4 of us, we know that we've created this LLC between the 4 of us. So we all have our own set of experiences in doing this, and we will have a plan and how we're going to receive applicants. So we're going to have all that together when that time comes. And you're right, in maintaining even that restricted covenant. So we will have policies in place how we're going to maintain that and keep up with that.
Okay, yeah, you have proven track
I'll add to that
records
too.
of the
We have a development agreement that is between the city of Franklin and the LLC partnership that will be going to BOMA on 1st September, right? In that development agreement, it outlines those rules for the deed restrictions. Now, deed restrictions are typically administered by a title attorney at sale. So it's really the I guess, real estate legal system that is set up that
the
really
title
helps to
company, yeah.
manage that process for qualifying someone at a certain income level to be able to purchase. All of that has to be done with the attorneys that are working on the sale of the home.
Okay, so it doesn't fall under this group. Okay.
Sure.
Evening, Chairman and Planning Commission, everybody. Appreciate the hard work that everybody's done, my colleagues in Derwin, the LLC, Greg, Mike. Affordable housing, workforce housing, we've talked about it for a long time in Franklin, and it just doesn't happen by accident. And as the development plan now goes forward, there's a development agreement. That lays out the future maintenance. It lays out the deed restrictions of these units that, we're going to provide housing in the affordable price range and in the workforce price range on this property. And when those families first move in and move out, the next family's income will be within those ranges too, as they're set by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I'm saying that because there's complexity to how we move forward with providing affordable and workforce housing options in our community. And this is a great opportunity to take a parcel of land and work with our not-for-profits that work on housing, that know the intricacies of it, to make it become a reality. We'd like to have more units, and hopefully we will, as this is an example.
Right.
The Board of Mayor and Aldermen have already been introduced that they'll need to make a contribution, because part of this exercise, if you want to call it that, is understanding the financial implications.
Absolutely.
And how the funding is going to all come together. And we're looking at that closely. The development agreement will lay that out clearly as well. So I hope that adds a little bit more context to what's happening here and the importance and what we can learn going forward from it. So
Thank you.
we're all
Thank you.
working together, and
Yes.
that was the whole
Purpose.
idea behind this type of initiative, and hopefully it leads, again, to more. This isn't the end.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Other comments, questions? I've got one observation. In slide number 6, you show the fire access. You call it the fire access route. And you cite the need for that because the road next to Sonic is underwater. Well, typically Mount Hood would be underwater as well during a similar backwater situation. The good point is that if you turn right onto Mount Hood, you drive around and make a left, and you're at the next fire station too. So it's probably just as close to the fire station, but your diagram of a fire access route coming back out to Hillsborough Road. Let's face it, when your payday lender's underwater, how are you going to pay the light bill?
When you get out to Mount Hope, you can take a right, and you can get all the way over to
Right. There's a close fire station when you take a right.
New
and
Highway
take a left.
96 without going through
Certainly.
floodplain. Yeah, sure.
Okay, that's all I can.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. Okay. Item number 3, discussion of an Envision Franklin amendment to add a special consideration for institutional uses at a specific address on approximately 51.9 acres located at 1190 Lewisburg Pike. So we will start with staff presentation. Eric, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're just figuring tech stuff out. Great. So this is an Envision Franklin amendment to create a new special consideration for the parcel at 1190 Lewisburg Pike, or a portion of the parcel at 1190 Lewisburg Pike. Quick background on the property. In June of 2020, an Envision Franklin amendment was brought forth to you all for a change from large lot residential to single family residential. And shortly thereafter, the property was annexed and given the PD zoning for the Tuckaway PUD. So you may recognize is it working? When you get to see the parcel, you may recognize it as the Tuckaway PUD. Currently, Envision Franklin states that for institutional uses in the single-family residential design concept, that they are encouraged to be at major intersections, and they may be appropriate if they don't impact the scale, access, and the traffic of the surrounding area. So staff does have some concerns about the traffic implications of potentially a church emptying out onto Lewisburg Pike with no other options for attendees to leave the building except for going out onto Lewisburg Pike. So staff does have some concerns regarding the traffic. So that's sort of where we sit with what would be expected for development on the site. If it were to be an institutional use, it would need to meet that criteria. So the applicant is, thank you so much. The applicant is bringing forward a new special consideration, which you'll see the language for with their presentation, to potentially allow for an institutional use at this site, even though it does not currently meet the existing special consideration for all institutional uses in the single-family residential design concept. So hopefully that made sense. I'd happy to answer any questions regarding Envision Franklin, and then the applicants do have a short presentation for you all as well.
Okay, Mr. Campbell?
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Greg Gamble, and I'm going to do my best to try and remember to talk closer to the microphone. We're interested in your input tonight. We want to hear what your thoughts are about this. When we started this consideration, the Cross family had a development plan approved, site plan construction documents approved, and we're ready to install tree protection, fence, and erosion control to pull their grading permit. The Cross family has a close relationship with Fellowship Church, and they said it's an interesting idea to explore that use on this property. This is about having a light imprint on the land, and I'm going to walk you through that when you see our master plan here in just a few minutes. We started with neighborhood meetings. We wanted to hear what the community, what the neighbors would thought. There were several very, very outspoken neighbors as we went through the process with the single-family residential, so we wanted to hear from them, and that's where we started. So we feel like we've come here tonight somewhat prepared with a bit more foundation in front of us or under our feet than just simply an ask, but we are here tonight to get your input and your feedback. Pastor Eric Hoffman is here to talk a little bit about an intro to Fellowship Church, and then I'll give the master plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Good evening. It's an honor to be with you tonight. Fellowship Bible Church has been part of the community in Williamson County for 25 years. We started and launched at our Franklin High School. We were meeting in the cafeteria, and then purchased land up on Franklin and Concord Road. I joined Fellowship staff in 2010 to help launch our Franklin campus. So Franklin campus has been in rented space on Columbia Avenue in the Lasco facilities. We've been renting there for temporal space, 18,000 square feet. And so we've been there for 11 years. And so we've been actively looking for the past 8 years to move out of temporary space so we weren't in danger of losing our space. And so, as you know, land is hard to come by in Franklin. And so we've been looking, and then actively over the last 2 years have looked at over 40 plus properties. Then we started having conversations several months ago with the Cross family. And it was pretty much everything we've been looking for in a property. Give you a little bit of our campus philosophy. If you have ever seen our Brentwood campus on the corner of Franklin and Concord Road, we take a lot of effort into having green space and kind of a pastoral kind of feel. So it has a pond, small buildings around a quad, walking trails around. So that's what we were looking for. We weren't looking for just a space that was almost like a Walmart building, just a box with parking. We wanted something very different. And so this property would allow us to be able to have a lot of green space, to be able to keep the front lawn on Lewisburg. We feel like that's very important to blend in with the architecture of the area and not turn it into just industrial or turn it into just a lot of lots. And so we want to preserve that, and you'll see that with our master plan. We would like to also let you know that we're not looking to add a school. That's not our focus. Our focus is Sunday mornings and small groups throughout the evenings. And we've been able to have several meetings outside of the scheduled meeting on August 10th with neighbors. So we've had many one-on-ones. We've had 2 gatherings with neighbors to hear their concerns, because our heart is to build relationships and to hear feedback and how we can enhance this part of Franklin and be a joy for residents to be able to use our property. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. This property, if rezoned for a church, would be one of 5 others between Machatcher Parkway and Goose Creek Bypass. Small churches. We're not requesting a rezoning from PD district to civic institutional where the uses are not capped, where the square footage is not capped. We're asking to stay PD district, but rezoned for uses that are consistent with what a church is. The church is committed to not having a school. They want to be focused, it's not what they do. They want to be focused on Sunday mornings and their small group Bible studies that happen during the week and in the evenings. They are a active neighborhood participant. They want this campus to be a park. They want this campus to offer opportunities for people within the neighborhood to gather. This is the current master plan for the property that has 32 single-family homes in the development plan. There's a range of lot sizes. The existing home that Ms. Cross has is on about a 2.5 acre lot. And then the lot sizes go down to about 80 feet wide. So there's a wide range, and that was intentional. The current approved master plan has a road that goes from Hillsborough Road to Crossway Drive, but the county only approved an emergency connection in that location, wouldn't approve a full connection. The neighbor to our south said, we don't want a road coming south or extending to the boundary that is currently Williamson County, and the board, mayor, and alderman at the time approved a modification of standards not requiring that road connection from this development to the southern property boundary. With 32 homes on this, they would only have one access out. On a Sunday morning, the church would have police escorted access or entry into and out of the campus for traffic control. The elements of the property that the church has really gravitated toward, if you drive down Hillsborough Road, is the existing tree line that you see in front of the Cross home. They said, whatever we do, that's where our campus starts. We want to be behind that. In our Envision Franklin special consideration, it states 100 feet, but this house is 350 feet from Hillsborough Road. Envision Franklin today says that existing residential uses cannot be used for institutional uses. It doesn't talk about the square footage. When you think about that in terms of the single-family policy area, it kind of makes sense. You don't want a home in Forest Crossing being turned into an institutional use. That's an Envision Franklin single-family policy. But here, we've got a little bit of a different situation. Here we have an estate home that's 350 feet from Hillsborough Road that could become the church offices. Behind that, we have an open space quad with a park-like setting, with a small water feature, with a water fountain, a little grand lawn that the members of the church can experience outdoor, a worship center beyond that, directly adjacent to a connection center and the education wing for the students, and the parking located behind. We've been very intentional about not putting parking directly behind existing single-family homes. We want to make sure that we listen to those neighbors, that we buffer those neighbors, that they don't feel like a church is moving into their backyard, and we see that as significant and important. The special consideration that we are requesting to be approved as a part of Envision Franklin says institutional uses may be appropriate at the Tuckaway 1190 Lewisburg Pike development for the front approximately 25 acres fronting Lewisburg Pike. Development should be designed in a manner that complements rural character of this corridor and the surrounding neighborhoods. Institutional uses should maintain a minimum front setback of 100 feet to preserve the rural and pastoral view sheds along Lewisburg Pike. And the building should maintain a height of 2 stories or less. Adaptive reuse of existing dwellings for institutional uses may be appropriate when accompanied by a development plan. And I think that's key to this, that a special consideration would lock in the fact that this could only happen through a development plan where the planning commission and the board, mayor, and aldermen get to review the size of the buildings, the traffic study, the height of the buildings, the rural character of those buildings. Does it fit the neighborhood context? I think are all very significant and very important. I think one of the most important aspects that I consider as a part of being a part of this master plan process is that the pastoral team continues to reiterate to us that the worship experience is the entire property and it starts at the entrance, and that this threshold as you enter into the property, this boulevard that brings you onto the campus, is about a decompression zone. It's about an experience of leaving Lewisburg Pike, entering into this campus where you have a very pedestrian-oriented layout of buildings. But that boulevard also provides us with storage for vehicles as they're leaving and exiting on Sunday morning. Right now, Fellowship has 3 services. Each service has about 200 members per service spread out over the Sunday morning. So it doesn't happen all at once. It's not the entire congregation all at once. And it is a small congregation. So in terms of scale, it's very complementary to a lot of the other smaller churches that exist right now on Lewisburg Pike. With that, we're happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Alderman Brown?
So in this amendment, are you removing the back area of the plan, of the development, where around Crossway? Are you removing that from this?
We will have to address that, likely in a new PUD or in a straight rezoning to a R1 or R2, something to that effect. It can't be a part of the existing situation, but right now, we're just asking for this Envision Franklin consideration. So if this is successful and we move to the next step, we're going to be having conversations with you about what happens to the remaining property. This is only about the front 25.
Yeah.
And that extends how far back? Back to the back of the parking? Is that the 25 feet?
25 acres.
I mean 25 acres.
Chairman, it's about right here. So this is an existing residence, and there's an existing residence up here. Both of those would stay. The church would purchase to about this location right here.
Okay.
Does that come, go ahead, no, you go ahead. No, you definitely need to go before me.
Alderman Baggett, go ahead.
The text says 100-foot setback on Lewisburg, but the home is now presently 300 feet.
The home is approximately 350 feet.
Yeah, 350.
From Lewisburg.
So I really, I mean, for me, I have no problem with this. I think actually it's a.
Let me add to that just one second. I don't mean to
Sure,
interrupt
yeah.
you, but on Lewisburg Pike, from Goose Creek Bypass south, there's an 80-foot scenic corridor buffer. That 100-foot is really derived from that distance, but the church wants the full distance to have that open space along Lewisburg. Sorry.
So for me, I think it would be a good thing if we could adjust that possibly. If we're going to go, because what I don't want is future expansion of the church towards Lewisburg that increases the size and the traffic concerns. And so I don't know what tools are in the tool belt to ensure that wouldn't happen down the line, whether that's through some sort of easement or conservation. I don't know that this would qualify for conservation. I don't know what tools are in the tool belt, but the three, making sure that it stays 300 feet back, in perpetuity, helps me a little bit in knowing that we're not going to have another building in 10 years that is, it kind of creeps up, and then all of a sudden you have capacity for 2,000 people, and we got a real problem. I think the limitation of what can be built behind the 350 really makes it palatable for sure. And I think, quite frankly, not a lot of places you can build churches in Franklin. Well, there are, but it's hard. And so it's very hard. And it really is something we need to be thinking about.
Front setback could be codified in the development
It could be.
plan.
Well, I'd like it, whatever it is, I'd like it to be permanent, as permanent as it can be. And so that would help for sure. I think it's a great plan. I love the idea. The fact the neighbors love it or like it is good. And like you said, there's already a bunch of churches there, and we don't really see major issues. You see more issues, people going to work on Monday morning and Tuesday morning on Lewisburg Pike, which is set to be improved on our CIP.
Alderman Berger?
Just real quick, is it Heritage Baptist, the one that's right there on Lewisburg?
Church of Christ.
Did you come, Heritage Church of Christ, when you come down, the new one that was built there?
Just
Yes.
one on each side.
What? Yeah. How many, anybody know how far back off the road that one sits?
It's closer than where we are. This would be the furthest setback church of any of the
Yeah,
other
I was
four
gonna
that
say,
are.
I'm not sure, I'm really worried about that, Patrick. I wouldn't want to see him put a conservation easement on that or anything, but I look at the Heritage, and it looks nice back there. It's set back quite a bit, but it's certainly not as back far as Miss Cross House.
I can bring some photographic
I'd like
measurements
to look
of
at that.
those
Yeah.
to the
Right.
meeting.
I was just going to say, I don't really concern too much about
But the view from Lewisburg is really the home, rather than the church.
That's right.
I think you did a great, fantastic job. It looks fabulous. But her house is beautiful up there, Mrs. Cross, and that'd make a great office, and the scenic view there, and time you get a boulevard in there, man, that's a great plan right there.
I think Marcia was next, and then I think Marcia had to come in.
Marcia,
No,
I'm
next.
sorry. Marcia, please.
As the pastor walked up, I said, Lord, help me. And forgive me if I'm not sinning, but I've just got to be truthful. So the pastor in this church has the misfortune of having probably the only person in here who drives by the existing church and by this proposed site every Sunday on my way to church. And so right now, as you drive down Columbia Avenue, there's like 3 or 4 churches, well, 2 or 3 churches that have Franklin police officers who stop traffic on the way to church. So there is a traffic jam on Columbia Avenue on Sunday mornings, guys, okay? And so as I go, and I go through Sullivan Farms, I'm headed out, and I pass by, and there are those 5 churches that you guys say on Lewisburg Pike. Now, I go through Sullivan Farms, so I miss a couple of them, but here's the thing, it's stop and go there because people are turning left, and you go up, and there's somebody turning right, and there's people coming out to go to their churches on Sunday mornings. God bless them, because I'm on the way to mine too. And I am, and you, Alderman Baggett just took the words right out of my mouth. If we add this church one way in, one way out, because there's no back way, okay? And when this church comes in, it's a small church now, because I attend a small church. The difference between my church and this church, though, is we're pretty much landlocked. We won't be able, now that the county has 2020 slipped that in there where there's a 5-acre, we can't build anymore. We're landlocked, okay? The thing with this church now, though, is, and there's going to be a police officer there, and I respect that. That's great. There's going to be now immediately, there's going to now be some stop and go and some traffic issues, okay, with the other churches and where they are, and with them having their officers, because the other churches do not have police officers. But if this church gets any larger, okay, and they're allowed to, to grow, and we want churches to grow, thank God for that. There can be a huge issue on Lewisburg Pike with traffic. And I can see that, because even now, every now and again, there's a little issue with the people stopping and turning and folks turning left, So I just see that can be an issue. And staff had made that was part of the opening, part of what staff said at the very beginning about allowing this, with it being a church and institution. So I just have some concerns with that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we will have turn lanes. Absolutely. Yeah, they'll have to be constructed. I'm sure. We don't know if a traffic signal is going to be warranted. If it's warranted, it's warranted. If, we just aren't there
Right.
with that
Yeah.
type of detail yet. We'd love to get to that point.
Commissioner Williamson?
So I definitely had the kind of a traffic study, knowing what that would be, how the lanes are going to be improved. Another thing, I know pushing the parking lot to the back, getting away from the single-family housing. One thing I would highly encourage is for any site lighting that you do on that, I know there are minimums. The 0.2 foot candles, up to 10 is max. And then, of course, on the actual property line, it's, required to be 0. But with that said, the way lighting calcs are calculated, it often completely ignores any light pollution that's coming on the top of the fixture or the side of the fixture. So what I'd highly encourage any lighting back there to be the full cutoff. The last thing we want to do is put a parking lot there where, people over in Windsor Park have suddenly noticed their sky is orange at night. So,
It's probably been our number one comment from the neighborhood meeting.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
absolutely.
And I know that can 100% be achieved by smartly selecting fixtures in the parking lot and any other site lighting, including the building.
That's great.
Commissioner McLemore?
Did I hear someone say that there has been a neighborhood meeting?
Have we had a neighborhood meeting? We've had three neighborhood meetings.
Okay, I'm looking at the sports fields and the homes on this.
There's been some
side.
concern about noise from pickleball.
Yeah, because.
That may or may not exist. We are just kind of exploring some things. We love the idea of having opportunities for the neighborhood and the members of the church to have volleyball, which they have at their campus now in Brentwood, to have some soccer or multi-purpose fields and play, just to have community together.
Yeah, sounds like it's going to be a lot of activity, and that's why I was wanting to know the results of the neighborhood meeting. So, were people
Activities that would be
concerned
normal for
about
a
it?
church that has elementary school kids, middle school kids, high school kids, and just the kind of coming together of those families.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just to follow up on the city required neighborhood meeting, general mixed feedback. Some of the concerns that came out of that meeting were traffic, obviously, privacy, light pollution, and just the general potential hubbub, of
Noise.
activity.
having a church?
Noise.
And noise, yeah. So just general, concerns that we typically get with most developments.
Thank you.
I'd have to agree with Alderman Baggett about the conservation easement on that front yard up to the tree line, just to make sure that that gets locked in.
Okay.
Yeah. Other comments? I've got a couple. It looks like when I look at slide number 5, it shows the extent of an HHO just to the north and then an HHO buffer that extends down into this parcel just short of Mrs. Cross's home.
Okay.
So what impact does that have on? what
Sure.
you're
In
proposing?
the HHO is protected, and that is on the property that's directly to the north of this. The HHO buffer is a little bit different. It's a distance of 500 feet from the HHO line. If there are naturally occurring slopes that are 14% or greater, they must be protected. They cannot be disturbed. We do have some 14% slopes on the property that are in the HHO buffer, and I'll try and point those out. But those are right here up at this tree line edge, right there, and that area will be protected. It was required to be per code.
There's a lot of slope coming across that property, and that would be another concern from a stormwater perspective, because you're talking about a lot of parking, a lot of asphalt in the back portion of the site, and obviously you could do things relative to the normal stormwater handling, the detention ponds, or use some permeable paver systems, or those kinds of things to kind of
And I say
capture some of that
this site has been fully engineered for roads and homes and lots at this point. But we know that back here, this is where there's a creek, there's a blue line stream. So this is where everything here is flowing down this way. So from the existing house, back to the creek, there's a drop in elevation. So when we talk about the church and the parking being behind, not only are they behind that tree row in the house, but they're also lower down in elevation as they're getting closer to that stream bed.
Okay. The other thing I noticed is it looks like, as you go, the back portion of this parcel, are both of those those existing residences back in the back part outside, are those both accessed through Crossway Drive? Is that?
They are today, yes,
Okay,
and
so
those
they-
are the sellers of the land as well.
Okay. So they wouldn't be impacted either way. If the church buys up to that point, then they're already, their means of ingress, egress is already.
It's still Crossway.
Out, defined through Crossway Drive, okay. It seems like we had similar conversations when the Church of Christ went in on Lewisburg, and the concerns that were raised then had to do with more elementary school being right across the street, and how much access would you have from church on Sunday, the school on Monday, that it was still just a two-lane highway, and I think there will always be concerns until Lewisburg has an expanded number of lanes that there will always be challenges with traffic on and off
Yeah,
Lewisburg Pikes.
we really hope to take the peak hour traffic trips during the week and the school impact traffic off the table.
Yeah.
So, thank y'all for your consideration
Right,
tonight. Really
thank you.
appreciate it.
All right, appreciate it. That's the last of the items, unless anyone else has any other business that we need to consider. Seeing none, we will adjourn this session.
Apart, like-